Welcome to the Property Management Show. Today, Brittany and I are interviewing Donata and Hans from Termageddon. Now, Termageddon provides privacy policies for websites which keep up with the ever-changing laws of the land.
Automatically.
Today's episode is about debunking common privacy myths that exist for small to medium businesses. So make sure you keep listening.
Hello to both of you. I know, Hans and Donata. Am I saying that right?
You are.
Yep. Am I saying it right? Okay, so we'll start. Hello, Hans. Hello to Donata. Thank you. I'm going to start. See, this is why you should.
I also struggle.
Okay.
What's so funny is you guys actually, I love the banter back and forth. I think stuff like this should go live.
Yeah.
Like all the small talk that we've had and everything, I think this is the best part. But yeah, of course we got to do the data privacy stuff.
No, yeah, I know. Well, that's funny. We try to leave some of that in because
Good.
Marie.
Because you don't want to look like we're robots.
Yeah, we are robots. I kind of am a robot. Okay, so Hans, Donata, privacy policy experts. Can you guys give us just like a quick tidbit, who you are, why we should trust you when talking about privacy policies on the website? Yeah, if you could just start off by that, and then we'll quiz you guys and start asking you a bunch of questions.
Sure.
Do you want to start?
No, you start. You're the brains.
So I'm Donata. I'm the president of Termageddon. I'm a licensed attorney in Illinois. I practice privacy law and contracts law, and I'm a certified information privacy professional from the International Association of Privacy Professionals. And I'm the one who wrote all of the policy questions, policy text, for Termageddon's policies, and I also keep us up to date with the law. So I keep track of all of the different states that have proposed different privacy bills, all of the states that have passed them, and what's going on a federal level.
And international.
And international, yeah, it's a lot.
My name is Hans. I am the vice president and co-founder of Termageddon. I do not have the credentials that Donata has. I'm just like a lowly sales and marketing guy. So I'm pretty decent at like translating some complex stuff into like layman's terms. So hopefully that's the value I'm adding today.
That's the value I add too.
There you go. Nice.
Good.
It's why we're both wearing blue right now.
We have our smart people and the language. Not that you're smart. Okay, I'm taking it too far. We're all smart here. Thank you for the intro.
Of course.
No problem.
So I think you have a good question to get us started.
Yeah, so a question that might be burning in our listeners' minds would be, why should I care? Why would property managers care about privacy laws? Companies like, Google, Apple, Facebook, there's no question why they need to be concerned about privacy because of the sheer size of their client base. They have a lot of information about people and some, people say they do creepy stuff with it, but
they definitely have information about me, like for sure.
The property managers are nowhere near that size and level of, information they have accumulated. So why would property managers even be at risk of being sued because of privacy?
Or why would they even care about it? It's like,
yeah.
Absolutely. It's a very confusing topic right now. A lot of people have a lot of questions, including the people who actually make these laws. So, you have to make sure that you have a, good understanding of what's going on. I think that it's easy to say, oh, Apple, Google, Facebook, that doesn't apply to me. But, there are some laws, there are some privacy laws right now that do have a revenue cap. So if you're making $25 million a year or above, or if you collect the personal information of like thousands of people and tens of thousands of people, that's when those laws apply to you. So if you're a small business, they, most likely won't apply to you. But the mass majority of the privacy bills that are proposed, of the privacy laws that are passed, don't have any revenue caps, don't even talk about how many people's information you collect or anything like that. So those laws would apply to small businesses. So it's something that would apply to property managers as well. And in terms of the information collected by property managers, you know, when property managers would know where a tenant lives, they would know what maintenance requests they have, they would know who lives in that house, you know, who's recently moved in, who's moved out, do they have pets, do they not have pets, things like that, which are actually very sensitive information. So, you know, at least for me, I don't want the world to know where I live. And I think that's most people. So that's why, you know, property managers really do need to take privacy seriously, is because they do have information that's sensitive. And also, you know, property managers are in the service-based industry. And, you know, complaints about privacy from consumers is how a lot of these investigations start. So just because millions of people are not complaining about you does not mean that there is no risk. And in terms of, you know, a more general statement of why property managers should care about privacy is because people care about privacy, right? I care about privacy. You guys care about privacy. There are, you know, very small amount of consumers right now who are like, yeah, take my data. I don't care. Give it to anybody you want. You know, send me all the junk mail. You know, so consumers care and people care. And that's why, you know, I think property managers should care as well.
I'll add a couple thoughts as well. I think it's very easy for people to think about the past, about, oh, well, this stuff has never really been that important. I don't see why it's going to become important. And that's the mistake that I see a lot of businesses making right now. They don't think it's important because all they're thinking about is their past experience with data privacy. No, like we're not talking about the past. We're not talking about the present. We're talking about the future. There are new privacy laws that are coming out into effect that are going to enable consumers to file complaints or even potentially sue businesses for taking their personally identifiable information without properly disclosing a privacy policy, for example. And by personally identifiable information, I'm gonna wipe that one away real quick. That is just fancy word talk for, you know, when you collect like a name, an email address, and a phone number on a contact form, for example. Those three examples, name, email, phone number, those are three examples of personally identifiable information. And the list obviously goes on further, but that's the stuff that all these laws are out to protect people from having businesses take without proper disclosure. And that's why I think property managers need to look into this, especially property managers, because, you know, outside of the fact that they have the tenants and all the details that Donata just disclosed, they also are probably getting inquiries, people moving across state lines and inquiring about moving into their location. Well, the problem with that is that these property managers are getting traffic from other states. Each of these states may or may not have their own set of privacy laws. And if they do have a set of privacy laws, they're all different from one another. So the other factor is, in addition to needing to disclose how and why you use your data, you also need a strategy around how am I going to stay up to date with all these privacy laws that are in all these different states, because I want my website to be viewed by people in all these states.
Yeah, I think Facebook really ruined it for the rest of us. You know,
Thanks,
everything,
Facebook.
yeah, everything was fine and nobody really, you know, was all right. And then, you know, Facebook came in and it's just like, oh man, now we have all these laws, but
Yeah.
that's just what it is.
Well, and I think that that's like an interesting point too, because there is all of this stuff happened over the last couple of years that really freaks people out. And but nobody really understands it. Nobody understands what it means. Like, what does it mean to have a privacy policy on my website? What does it mean to be collecting information? And we get questions like that on the front end of our sales process, even, where if a property management company gives us certain access to their software, it's like, oh, I don't know if we can do that because I don't disclose that on my website, or I don't mention that when I'm talking to people. I need to make sure that the information's safe. So it's like, if you're doing that aspect of it, it's great, but that's like behind closed doors. You need to have a policy on your website to share with the world. My question about that is, you mentioned all of the like crossing state lines and how there are different policies in each state. How do you cover that in one privacy policy? Or is it just one like super duper long one that says everything from every state?
A tab for every
state.
state.
A tab for every state. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so you're actually kind of joking about this, but there are some websites that will have a separate privacy policy for California residents that will say, as a California resident, you have these rights. And then everybody else gets a privacy policy that are like, we do what we want and you can't do anything about it.
Really?
Yeah. So to combine all of the different privacy laws into one privacy policy, as somebody who writes them all the time, is hard. It is, because there's so many different disclosures that you need to make, and different consumers from different states get different rights. There are a lot of companies right now that are integrating all of the rights that normally, for example, Nevada consumers would get, into all of the states. So instead of saying Nevada consumers, we won't sell your personal information, they say all consumers, we won't sell your personal information. And there's a lot of debate right now as to the length of these policies and what they should contain and how do you word everything and how do you make sure you comply with the laws plus comply with the cases plus, have all the other legal disclosures in there. And that's a hard question. I really think that's something that having a privacy policy that makes sense and that has all the required disclosures can take a very long time to put together. And it's hard. That's all I can say. There are ways to do it, but it's something that takes a lot of time and a lot of training, at least from my perspective.
Regarding the first question, when do I need to put in a privacy policy? It is my best rule of thumb suggestion for this is whenever your website has a contact form, because that means it's asking at least for a name and an email and or phone number. Well, name, email, phone number, all three are what's called personally identifiable information. Yeah, I know I talked about it, but I just want to reiterate, that's when the light bulb should go off. I need a privacy policy. Because I'm collecting PII, I need to disclose what I'm doing with that PII. Yeah. And that's what can make it simple. Now,
and that's the most important thing, probably.
Yes.
The thing that's interesting that I was going to ask is, since there are all of these laws, it kind of sounds like the best way to protect yourself is just to go with kind of the strictest laws and protect yourself that way. Is that a good rule of thumb to go by? Or is that even difficult because they are so different?
Yeah, so kind of yes and no to that question. So in terms of the strictest laws, in terms of things that you can't do with personal information, that's a good idea to follow the strictest law. However, each law requires slightly different disclosures. So for example, there's a California law that requires you to disclose whether or not your website responds to do not track signals. But then there's a Nevada law that says you have to disclose whether you sell the personal information of consumers. So kind of which one is the stricter one, you're not sure. So you kind of have to read through all of them and see what disclosures they require and then match up into a full list of all of the disclosures that you need to make. At least that's what I've done in the past, because if you miss one type of disclosure in one law, then you're automatically not complying with that.
This is stressful.
Yeah. I actually have a follow-up question. So maybe it's a stupid question.
No, it's not.
But what if I'm a property manager? I have, contact forms on my website, but I don't really sell the information anywhere. Do I still need to disclose that I don't sell the stuff?
Yes, because you have to disclose whether or not you sell it. So it's a similar thing with do not track, right? So you don't have to disclose how you respond to do not track. You just have to, you don't have to respond to do not track in a particular way. You just have to disclose how you respond to it. So a lot of people think, okay, I'm not sharing this information with anybody. I'm not selling it to anybody. That means I'm fine. I don't need any of this. No, that's actually not the case. You do still need to make those disclosures.
Right. For example, someone, like if there's a property management company with a free rental analysis form on their website, they can't just be like, oh, all I'm doing is giving them a free rental analysis like I promised in my form. I'm covered. I don't need to do anything. It's like, no, they're not.
So if you're providing free resources, free products, free services, that doesn't mean that you're in the clear, that those laws don't apply to you. No, they actually have a very specific provision saying just because it's free doesn't mean that you get to take people's information and do whatever you want with it.
Well, and I guess too, if you're not disclosing, who's to say, like if I'm a person going to a website, filling out a form, and you don't have a privacy policy disclosing whatever you're doing with that information, whether you're doing something with it or not, and somehow my information gets out there, am I able to go after that company because they didn't tell me if they were or if they weren't doing stuff with my information?
It depends what location you're in.
Yeah, so it really depends on what laws apply to you and your state and where you're located. There's a couple different ways that could work. So there are a lot of privacy bills right now that have been proposed that allow a person to sue a company directly if they have violated their privacy rights. Now, none of those laws have passed. None of those bills have passed yet, but if they do, then you would have the ability to go personally to this company and sue them. As it stands right now, you would have to complain to your state's attorney general and say, you need to look into this case. These people violated my privacy. And then the attorney general makes a decision whether or not they want to pursue that case. Or you can also make a complaint to the Federal Trade Commission. And the Federal Trade Commission generally oversees, privacy violations across state lines. And, if the Federal Trade Commission is interested, they'll pursue a case against that company as well.
Wow. That's serious stuff.
Huh?
That's very serious
It's
stuff.
very serious. Thankfully, we have a privacy
The
policy.
Federal Trade Commission, I'll tell you that.
And I like to think of it like this, 5 years ago, are you familiar with what an SSL certificate is for a website?
Yes.
All right, getting that nice little HTTPS.
That's something we know.
Website. Right, good. Security is really important. Prior to like 3-4 years ago, no one cared. No one cared. SSL, no SSL, yeah, it'd be nice, but I don't know if I want it. And now people are like, they feel weird when they're on a website that says not secure. I mean, it's like stressful.
Well, yeah, because Google will tell you now. It will give you a warning message. It will say,
exactly.
And I don't think it does it all the time, but I have seen it where I've gone to people's websites and it's like, do you want to continue?
Or
are you sure you want to move forward with this very scary site?
No, I don't want to move forward. I don't know.
So that's what that's what I believe we're going to see in 5 years from now. Right now, we're in the present, not, we're talking about what's going to happen in the future. So right now, it's like, oh man, I can't believe I have to have a privacy policy on my website. Oh, this is so stressful. Well, 5 years from now, we're going to look back at this time and be like, can you believe these companies could just do what they wanted with the information they would collect? And that's what's going to happen. I mean, all the laws are trending in that direction. All the dialogue is trending on valuing the privacy of human beings.
So I was curious about, any myths that exist around privacy, that you've heard of while talking to small to medium-sized companies, not just property management companies, but just companies in general.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we see so many of them. I mean, my website's secure, so I'm fine. My customers don't care. I'm too small. Nobody's going to enforce these laws. It's nobody reads privacy policies. No consumers care. Things like that. We hear that all of the time.
Oh, another one is I'll just copy and paste a template, or I'll just copy and paste one from my competitor. And that's a very frightening one because that's just like, you're taking information, you're copying something, you have no idea what was included or not included to generate that policy. So, and obviously you're not an attorney, that's a dangerous one. Whenever I hear that someone's like, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste a template, I'm like,
which is so funny.
Out there,
well, it's like if you copy and paste if you copy and paste something from your competitor, who's to say your competitor didn't copy and paste it from somebody else? Like, you don't know where it came from. But it's so funny because even prior to us talking to you guys, I was trying to do, and I know we've talked a little bit before and you gave us a bunch of information, but I was trying to do a little bit of additional research to get a better understanding of just privacy policies in general. And all of the first page of searches are literally templates that you can copy and paste. And it makes it seem like it's so easy and the information is out there. It's like, it's not an email. It's not an email template. It's like a legal document. It is a legal document, correct?
Yeah, what stresses me out with those templates is that, when they promote, oh, we're going to give you this free template for a privacy policy, it seems like the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard, because they're like, fill out this free privacy policy. Okay, turns out, everyone, nothing in life is free. I'm removing the curtain today in this webinar. Nothing in life is for free. Someone is getting something somewhere. And when someone says free, like, alarm bells should go off in your head when you're getting a free privacy policy document. So yeah, in life, things that are free, probably, if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it probably is. And that's the type of stuff you need to consider when thinking what's the right solution to protect your business.
I mean, I was doing some research, and obviously this is fun for absolutely no one except for myself, but I'm like, I want to fill these out. I'm going to see what this is like, because I just, sometimes you just got a couple minutes.
See what happens.
That's what you do on a Friday night,
No,
2
Friday
a.m.
I did my case law, but so, I went to fill out these forms, and they're like, do you want to be protected on mobile? I'm like, yeah, my website works on mobile. I want that. They're like, $15. I'm like, what? And then, they ask you, do you want limited liability? I'm like, yeah, I want to limit my liability, extra $20. So it's like, it just ends up not being free. I mean, towards the end, I obviously never paid any of these people, but towards the very end, I ended up racking a bill for like $120. And I'm like, you said this was free. Yeah. And that's so confusing and kind of deceptive to people too, because let's say I'm just a regular person and I don't know what limit your liability means, or like mobile or whatever. And I say no to these questions because I want it for free. And then it turns out I get kind of trash work. Yeah. And that's very unfortunate. And then, a lot of times with copying and pasting other people's templates, number one, it's copyright infringement. If you're copying and pasting something from somebody else's website, you really don't want to infringe on anybody's copyright when doing that. Number two, you don't know who wrote theirs, and that should be concerning. Maybe it's their, teenage son who wrote it. You don't know.
And then Googled privacy policy
and got a template.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of, then it's kind of on you to keep track of all the new privacy laws, of all this new case law, all this information. And it's like, I have the time to do that, but I don't know but that's my full-time job.
Yeah. And you understand what it means. It's like, it takes you a lot of time to decipher it, and you're educated on this stuff. If it was just a normal person, like if me or Marie did it, it would be like, what does this mean? We have to call them. What is
even apply to me? Does this, what disclosures do I need to make? What other pages I need to build on my website, things like that. And it can get very confusing and very time consuming pretty quickly. So I would be always cautious about using templates or free privacy policies or anything like that, especially since a lot of times they say, if it's free, then, you're the product, right?
Yeah, that's good.
You're bartering with your information, essentially.
Yeah.
Exactly. And do you really want to do that with a privacy policy?
Yeah.
That's really meta.
It is way too meta for me.
Something I've seen recently, I was so frustrated. I don't know, it was 3 days ago. I was doing some research trying to find a new software for us to use, or just playing around with things. And I went to one website and there's a tab that says pricing. So I went there and it's like, give me all your information and then we'll show you the pricing. And I'm like, no, hard pass on that. But it's like, they want the information so they can give you emails and sell you stuff and do this, which is normal. But that was just a funny example of situations where nothing's free.
Yeah.
Pricing for free. Right.
So I'm not going to discredit someone on, holding up pricing, because maybe they won't fully understand it by the time they get to the pricing page. But I think you hit on something interesting, which is, privacy by design, which is a topic Donata's discussed a lot, which is how and when you disclose things to an end user, and are you giving a user a good or bad experience on their website while doing it? And those are things that have to be weighed out. I would hope that software company, whichever one you went to, thought long and hard about, all right, are we going to put up a wall and prevent anyone from getting through without them giving us all their information first? Boy, I hope they thought that one out.
I'm sure they didn't.
Well, they might be expensive. I'm guessing that's what that. To
well,
me, whenever they withhold the
that,
pricing, that means they're expensive.
Right. Well, and the thing is, I get, because we have a lot of clients we work with too. When it comes to pricing, they want to get somebody on the phone to discuss pricing before.
It's complicated.
Yeah, because someone might charge 15%, but everything comes with that, and they do X, Y, and Z. But somebody that doesn't understand the property management industry wouldn't know that. But it's like, why have a pricing tab on your website if you're not going to?
Why have it at all?
Contact us for pricing.
That's a fair point. Yeah. That's a fair.
I guess that's not really privacy policy related. I was just like, oh, we're talking about forms, and this was annoying.
Well, anyone just tries to venture away from the data privacy conversation at all, whenever given the chance. Like, all right, let's talk about look at that bird, right?
Well, to bring us back to privacy policies, you hit on something really interesting because, it seems like with the power of the internet, I could really research anything and understand anything if given the time. But, you mentioned something about, well, there are a lot of laws in different states, but what if I have a lawyer on staff or I have a buddy who's a lawyer? Like, can I just have my buddy write up a privacy policy for me? That's going to be better than a template, right?
Yeah, I think if your friend or anybody that you have in house specializes in privacy law, you should definitely have them write your policies. I always say that that's the best choice, especially if they're willing to give you a discount, right? I think for a lot of us lawyers, we focus on one or two areas in our practices, right? So you usually don't have a divorce attorney who also practices in contracts. And if they do, they're probably not that good at both of those things. So usually as attorneys, we focus on, one or two areas in our practices, and, then the rest we just hire our own lawyers for that kind of stuff. So like I have a lawyer who dealt with like an estate issue. I'm a lawyer myself, but I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. So I had to hire somebody else to do it. And especially in terms of like data privacy and things like that, it's something that's a very complex field. So I've actually written privacy policies for lawyers who practice contract law, for lawyers who practice intellectual property law and things like that. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from them saying, yeah, it's great because I don't focus on this area of law. I don't know anything about it. So it's good to, hire somebody who does know about that area, just like the same as myself. If I had an issue with, my land taxes or whatever, I would hire somebody to do that.
So don't have an eviction attorney create a privacy policy.
No,
probably not the best.
Most of the property managers in the industry, if they have legal counsel, is it called legal counsel? I don't know. Maybe that's just in court. If they have legal counsel in house, it's probably an eviction attorney.
Okay.
So
I think it never hurts to talk to your attorney about it. You can ask them, hey, like, what do you know about data privacy? Are you comfortable with this area of the law? I can say 9 times out of 10, if they're doing evictions, they're not going to be. But I mean, there's nothing's going to hurt by asking unless they bill you by the hour. But, you can always ask.
Well, and I think that will resonate with our audience too, because we work with a lot of property managers that film like educational videos that talk about evictions or, screening or like fair housing laws and things like that. And they're like, don't ask your eviction lawyer about fair housing laws or don't do this. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And most people that are listening probably get what you're saying. So that's good.
And it's the same thing with lawyers too. Like if I focus my practice on a certain area, I probably don't focus on the other areas of law. So, I mean, it's something that even a lot of lawyers can be confused about as well. And if anybody has any questions or want to talk to me about privacy, I'm always open for that. Nobody ever takes me up on that offer, but it'd be fun.
Are there other myths that you want to share with our audience, or want to just give them additional information about things to look out for?
Sure. So what we hear a lot from people is, my state doesn't require a privacy policy, so that means I don't need one.
That's a really good one.
So we're located here in Illinois, right? So Illinois currently does not have a law that requires you to have a privacy policy. And you think that, that'd be it. We're good. We're golden. No problems here. But a lot of these privacy laws, as Han said previously, want to protect the consumers of that state and not the businesses. So it really depends on where the consumer goes when they go online. So for property managers, it is possible that someone from Nevada wants to move to your state and submits their information on your website, or somebody who has a property in your state but actually lives in Nevada. They want to submit their information to have you manage their property. You still might need to be compliant with those laws.
And for the record, there's about a dozen states in total. I know we've referenced Nevada, but that's just because
it's not just Nevada.
Yeah, Nevada just happens to be the next one up in line to launch their amendment to the privacy law.
Right. And then another one that we see a lot is, my website is secure, so I don't need a privacy policy. Security of websites and privacy of information are actually two completely different concepts. You see a lot of people getting into trouble with privacy laws because, they were breached or something like that. But just because your website is secure and built well and beautiful and all of that does not mean that you don't need a privacy policy. Two separate concepts. And then I think there was another one that I did want to talk about, but now let me think. Okay, yeah, my business is too small for anyone to care about privacy. I think there's kind of two different ends there. Point number one, a lot of the privacy laws don't focus on just large businesses. Point number two is consumers care. And they don't care how small your business is. They don't care that you're a mom and pop shop. They care about their privacy, and people care about their privacy. And I think that just because all these big firms are getting sued doesn't mean that smaller companies won't get fined.
They just don't make the headlines.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think having a small business, a lot of that is the trust that you build with people. I think for large businesses, trust might not necessarily matter that much. But for small businesses, it's really crucial. And, if you choose to say, oh, nobody cares about privacy and I'll just do whatever I want with your information, you're going to lose that trust. And, I've heard people say, oh, well, people in Alabama don't care about privacy. That's not true. Like, whoever came up with that? I mean, everybody cares.
Well, I think the trend is that people are caring more and more. I definitely think there are people that still are like, I don't read that stuff. And hey, everyone can be guilty. Everyone is guilty. Otherwise, we'd all be sitting and reading terms and conditions on new iPhone updates or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everyone is absolutely guilty, but that does not mean that people are becoming more conscious of the fact that, wait, maybe I am going to think twice before I do it. The other thing to note is that, having a privacy policy does raise credibility. It doesn't ruin credibility. It raises credibility with you and a prospect. Not to mention, in addition to that, consumers like it. Google likes it as well. Privacy policies are known to be a ranking factor because it's a part of the trust part of what Google looks for when ranking websites. So there's many good reasons to get it set up and a couple bad reasons to not do it.
Yeah. I like what you said about the credibility piece of it too, or establishing trust piece of it, because we talk to a lot of property managers where one of their biggest value adds or one of their differentiations that they want to advertise is their transparency with their pricing, their transparency with the services they offer. They're like, we are completely open, upfront, honest about everything. Here's what we do. But if you don't have a privacy policy, you're not doing that. So if you really want to stay consistent, that's a really good way to do that.
It's people liking the idea that they're transparent without actually living it.
Yeah,
if you're really living it, you're going to be pursuing things like this.
Yeah, that is probably one of the most important things to be transparent about.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so one question I wanted to ask was to maybe help us understand some terms that may be thrown around privacy that maybe not everyone, I don't even know how to differentiate them. So, privacy policy, we've said that millions of times throughout this conversation, but also we see words like terms of service or like, a disclaimer. Like, can you give us a bit more context as to what each of these terms mean? And do you need all of them, as a property manager?
Yeah, do you want me to take that one?
Your call.
Okay.
I think I can handle it, but you got this. You got this, and I'll jump in if I feel so obliged.
So just generally speaking, privacy policy is a statement that talks about what data a website collects, what is done with that data, and who that data is shared with. There's a couple other disclosures that go in there, but those are kind of the three main points that everybody wants to know when going on a website, right? What do you collect, what you do with it, who you share it with. Terms of service, a lot of people also call this terms and conditions. So those are interchangeable terms. But basically, it talks about the rules of using a website and limits the website owner's liability. So it can answer some commonly asked user questions like, what about refunds? What about cancellations? It also includes protection for, let's say you include a Facebook link on your website. You don't want to be liable for the data sharing practices of Facebook. So that's why you have a terms of service. And it also just generally helps limit your liability in case something goes wrong. So, if your website's ever hacked, if somebody loses their information by using your website, gets a virus, gets injured, things like that, that's really what a terms of service is needed for. I would say that a privacy policy and a terms of service is needed for almost every single website. So if you collect personal information and you have a website, I'd have a privacy policy and a terms of service. A disclaimer kind of limits the scope of rights and obligations of the website owner and the website user. So a disclaimer wouldn't necessarily be needed for property managers because it talks about, let's say you provide advice that could be seen as legal advice. If you show advertisements, if you participate in affiliate marketing, if you provide fitness or health tips and advice, that's when a disclaimer really comes in. So I'd say for most property managers, privacy policy and the terms of service would really be the ones that I would be looking out for. But it always depends on exactly what you do with your website. Each website is different. You might need a disclaimer as well.
So what if you have an educational blog page on your website and one of the blog posts you have talks about evictions? In that instance, do you think you would need a disclaimer, even if you're not giving legal advice and you're saying, talk to an attorney, but here are the steps to take? Would you need to put some type of disclaimer in there?
Yeah, you would. So providing legal advice is not whether or not you actually provide legal advice, it's whether the reader thinks that you might be providing legal advice. So if there's anything on your website, like advice, tips, tricks, evictions, foreclosure.
Could be construed as legal advice.
Yeah, people could say, oh man, they're giving me legal advice. It's better to just have a disclaimer that says, this is not legal advice.
Is this the moment now in the conversation where we have our own disclaimer saying none of this is legal advice?
Yeah, right.
None of this is legal advice.
Talk to a professional lawyer who practices privacy law.
This is not for the faint of heart.
So I had another question, unless you...
No, you're good.
I was curious, is there some sort of privacy playbook that people could download, check out, just so they can learn more about this topic as a whole?
Unfortunately, there really isn't anything that's offered by the government that can be the one place where you find all of the information that you need. And I think that's part of what makes this space so confusing and difficult to navigate, is because at least the US government is not providing really good guidelines or advice for people to follow. But there are a couple of websites that, people might want to look at that, might be able to help you kind of hopefully put some semblance of a full picture together. So the first one would be the Federal Trade Commission's website. If you are collecting the information from European Union residents, you should check out the Information Commissioner's Office website, which is the United Kingdom Data Protection Authority, and they have some good information there for people from overseas. I personally use the International Association of Privacy Professionals website all the time, and that's, I believe, IAPP.org. And they have a lot of good resources there. I actually had a few compliance guides published there. I did a Nevada law compliance guide there that ended up on their resource center. I also did another one for Maine, which applies to like internet service providers. So that doesn't matter for most people, but it was on there. And then also the California Attorney General's office, and that's oag.ca.gov/privacy/CCPA. And I think if you really dug down into all these websites, hopefully you could form a good picture of what's going on. But again, there's really, as far as I know, there's really no set guide from the government that tells you exactly what you need to do. So you kind of have to compile a picture from a few different places, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, right? Because it's already confusing and you have to kind of play this game of following the breadcrumbs just to get a good idea of what is out there.
Yeah, and it's like, even though I'm not going to go and create my own privacy policy, whenever I hire somebody to do something for me, or whenever I'm working on a project, even if somebody else is helping me with it, I like to know.
Be aware.
Be aware, have a general idea, so you know that whoever you hire or whoever you're working with actually knows what they're doing too. And it's not like, it's not like you would go to Fiverr and buy a privacy policy, but yeah.
But it's not free. It's $5.
It's $5.
I'm sure there's people out there selling it.
Yeah, but it's like, it's good to be educated and at least be aware on a high level, so that when you do have somebody help you, you can kind of say, oh, okay, this is what I needed.
Or they sound like they know what they're talking about,
right?
At the very least. And so, is there such a thing as a shelf life for a privacy policy or terms and conditions? Does it ever go stale?
Well, a shelf life is interesting way of wording it. Technically, no, until the laws change. So it's only when the laws change, whether they be updated or new ones are added, that a business would have to stay involved. So it's kind of like yes and no. But I would say the best way to answer is there is a shelf life, in the sense that because of external forces, because privacy laws get added or changed, that justifies why you need to update your policies and stay on top of when these laws change.
And there's 2 new laws going into effect over the next 6 months. And then after that, it seems like there's about 10 bills that have been proposed. And they're all most of them are in a committee right now. There were over a dozen, and then a few of them were kind of put on the back burner, but there's 10 that are active right now. There's about 5 federal ones, and I know that the federal lawmakers are working through recess right now to try to come to some type of an agreement over a privacy law. In terms of like how often do they expire, or how often do they become non-compliant, depends on how often the laws change. In the next 6 months, that will happen twice.
So would you say, like, in the next 5 or 10 years, will the laws be changing, or could you think that they would change every 6 months, once a year, or could it even become more common as
more people are interested in protecting their data?
Well, it kind of depends on if we're going to go federal or state, right? If we continue going with the state model, how many states are there now?
52? Or is that a deck of cards? I think it's 50.
Okay, so it could be 50 times, right? Depending on where you're located and where you do business. If it's federal, that will probably be once. And then depending on who gets rulemaking authority, So if the Federal Trade Commission gets it, they'll make new rules, which means that your disclosures will need to change. And then there will be enforcement. There will be cases interpreting those rules, which means everything will change every single time. So it can be a lot. Or, I don't know, maybe world will stop turning. I don't know.
Maybe data will become obsolete.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet was the fad, so.
Yeah. People are doing the minimalist thing now. So
Yeah, just
going off the grid.
tea.
Everybody's deleting Instagram.
And then after a few years, it's going to be the reverse.
Yeah.
Like, too minimalist. Let's go the opposite direction. I actually have, again, maybe a stupid question, but okay. So hear me out. What if someone could write a privacy policy that could like just cover all the bases? Like, is there such a thing as like
universal?
Can't you like just preempt everything that they could possibly want you to put in a privacy policy and just put it and then never have to worry about it? That's why I said it might be a stupid question, but I just wanted to. Has anyone tried? Have you tried?
Well, the problem with that outlook, although I like it in the sense that it's beautifully simple, the problem with it is that we don't know what laws will get implemented and how they'll be laid out. So it makes sense from the fundamental concept of like, what data do you take? What do you do with it? And with whom you share it with? But are there little intricacies about these laws which won't allow you to have some sort of blanket, got all statement type thing? Which is the unfortunate thing to it, really.
I mean, I think I can give a good example, right? So to exercise my rights as a consumer, I have to contact the company and tell them, I don't want you to sell my data anymore, right? So if you were trying to preempt the state laws that are coming and let's say, think of everything and create a privacy policy that includes everything, you could say, contact us at this email and we won't sell your data anymore. Okay. California comes out, says you need to have a toll-free phone number or an email form, right? So as much as you could anticipate these things,
there's always going to be
our lawmakers can surprise us.
Who would have thought toll-free phone number?
Yeah, who would have thought that toll-free phone numbers were going to be a thing again?
Yeah.
But California does. And
I know, aren't all phone numbers toll-free now?
Right? Yeah, I don't even know what toll-free means.
It's actually funny. One of our account managers, like last week, was like, "What's a toll-free number?" Oh, that was before your time.
Yeah.
Oh,
let's not show our flops.
It was. I remember back in the 90s, you would like call someone, and if it was 800, somehow you're not paying for it or something.
There was the landlines.
Yeah,
I think with cell phones that doesn't apply anymore. But you think that you can anticipate all these things, but you really can't in practice. And a lot of times technology changes. So, for example, you could say, "Oh, I'm processing this data to send you email newsletters or whatever." But the European Union decided to insert something about automated decision making, which is making decisions via computer without any human involvement. So let's say you're a below credit score X, you don't get a credit card, no human is involved in that decision. Most websites, you wouldn't even think that you have to disclose that, especially if you don't do it. But, some of the laws require you to disclose that because there's things that come up, there's technology that changes. Hopefully that answers your question. I don't know.
That does. It makes sense.
It just made me depressed.
Right. Well, it's like, who knows? Maybe in 5 years we'll have a teleportation hub address.
Exactly.
Crossing my
maybe
fingers.
The world will have one giant policy.
Yeah. Who knows?
That means everyone has to get along.
Yeah. World peace via policies.
Exactly. That's what we're working towards here at 4.5. World and Armageddon. Let's make world peace.
One set of policies for all mankind.
Exactly. Well, yeah, this was amazing. Lots of information. I have a good idea now. I think for us, our last question is always like, if there are a couple like main takeaways that you would make sure that somebody pulled out of this, what would those be for you guys?
Can I go first? And then you go second?
You go ahead.
Cool. when a website collects a name and an email address and a phone number from a contact form, they're collecting personally identifiable information. That would be mine. PII. If I could have everyone today learn personally identifiable information is name, email, phone number, and several other things, but those are 3 really good examples of personally identifiable information, I'd be happy. And that's when you need a privacy policy. Yeah.
I think for me, it's more of a broad statement, which is care about privacy, care about consumers, and care about what your customers want, because what they want is privacy. And regardless of how small or how big your business is, you're never too small to afford your users the respect that they want and the respect that they deserve. And I think the respect to their privacy rights is one step closer to getting there.
Boom. Nice work. That's exactly why I went first. Exactly.
Because you couldn't follow that.
Yeah.
I did have one follow-up question. I know you said that was the last one, but it just popped in my head.
You're killing it now. She's got the good questions.
So it just occurred to me that all the stuff we talked about today seems very scary. And obviously, I don't want property managers to react and just say, well, I'll just remove forms from my website. Like, this is too risky, right? Like, that's an extreme. But what advice can you give property managers, given that they need forms on their website to keep getting, people contacting them, both owners and tenants? Like, it's a requirement for them to get information from tenants, but then they also don't want to get into trouble. So what can they do?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually speak from my history because I was in the web design industry for 7 years, actually. Don't let data privacy ruin your business model to get more leads and to facilitate passing off of information between tenants and prospects and yourself. Contact forms are beautiful because your business is not open 24/7. If someone missed you and it's 6:05 p.m. and your business is already closed, they might go somewhere else and you just missed that deal. So rather than just trying to pretend this data privacy stuff doesn't exist and you're going to remove forms, I can't express enough how dangerous of an idea that is. Rather, ask 4.5, like, hey, what do you think I should do for a privacy policy? Because people have solutions. They exist, and it's not that scary. It's scary because it's new, but 5 years from now, as I said earlier, 5 years from now, we're going to look back at this time and be like, oh man, we were all freaking out because we had no idea what to do. It will get figured out, people. It'll get figured out.
Right. And there's solutions out there that, take very little time to set up, can help you just do this as something you get done, and then you don't have to worry about it. You move on and you can, do your job and do the stuff that you actually want to do.
Yeah. Not to mention, I think like the younger and younger generations aren't even calling people anymore. They only want to submit through forms and stuff like that. Yeah, there you go.
I'm like that. Like, I like when I go to a restaurant and I can just get a screen and I just select what I order.
Oh yeah, I like that too. It's just convenient too. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I like talking to humans. I love
talking to humans, but I feel like I spend all day at work talking to humans. So after that, I'm kind of like, let me talk to the computer. I actually get made fun of. My family will be like, text me back. And I'm like, well, it's because I read it and then forget.
Yeah.
Like, there was no call to action.
I know there was no CTA.
No call to action.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah, well, this has been great. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We appreciate you guys. Obviously, you have a great service. We haven't mentioned that yet, but you guys offer privacy policies that people don't have to think about. 4.5 uses you guys for our website and for our clients' websites. So we're definitely fortunate to have you in our lives. It makes everything easier. So thanks so much for all of the education today, and also just all of the help that you guys are offering to the universe, because Marie and I definitely have a better understanding of how scary this is now. So thank you.
It's all right. It's fine. We don't mean for it to sound scary.
Yeah.
You are
called Termageddon.
Yeah.
Termageddon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Termageddon on. Protect yourself before you wreck yourself.
It's just that there's a lot going on, and this is a space where nothing happened for like decades.
And now it's just moving.
Now it's like everything's happening all at once.
I guess overwhelming is it's more overwhelming.
I get it. Yeah.
A lot of
I just hate giving off that vibe, but I get it. I mean, that is what's happening. So, I mean, I guess it's just truthful.
I mean, I do have so many charts in my office, so it looks like a serial killer works there. But
maybe one day we can
do it, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, thank you guys again.
To our listeners, we hope that after watching or listening to this episode, you now have a better idea of what privacy is. It is overwhelming. It is kind of scary, but you don't have to do it alone. As usual, if there are topics that you want to listen about, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And if you're not sure if you have a privacy policy on your website that's protecting you, if you have a 4.5 website, just contact us. If you don't, definitely contact your web developer or contact Termageddon. They should be able to help you, or they will be able to help you for sure.
Yeah.
Protect yourself. That's the best thing I can say.
Before you wreck yourself.
Before you wreck yourself.